Babe, what's the matter with your feet?
Oh, it's swollen. I just been on them a lot.
You think maybe
What?
pregnant?
If I am, you better put me in the circus. You know how old I am?
Yes, I know how old you
okay.
are. I also know that you've been really tired lately. And your feet and ankles have been swollen, and you use the bathroom all times of the night because I wake up every time you get up.
All right now. If you about to say my belly getting bigger, man, we got a problem. What?
Why don't you give your doctor a call tomorrow?
I will be fine.
No, but just to be sure. Okay?
The majority of the people with kidney disease right now in the country are people who don't have symptoms. So as the kidney function starts to decline, you're largely asymptomatic.
I think Linked by Love series is so important because of the impact that it could have on the Black community. Just validating and normalizing the experience that family members and patients have in this whole process of being diagnosed with kidney failure. It's okay to be scared and nervous and afraid, and I think the Linked by Love shows that and all the range of emotions that one may experience from either the family members and the patient themselves.
People don't know what resources are necessarily available to them, or they may not always know what they can do for their health. And I think this series gives a nice look into that, whether it be a diet change or having that support system. I think it's really good for other people to see that. And with the Morris family, we are all just so dynamic and helping each other move forward and process it. I think that's an important thing because whether it be kidney disease or another condition that a family may face, it's hard to accept it and to move forward and to not lose hope. And I think the Morris family is a great example of not losing hope, just moving forward and finding the best solutions that we can and just loving each other.
It will be a whole new world to other people out there, especially the African American community, where kidney disease and hypertension and diabetes is so prevalent. Like I said, I saw that in my family, just growing up all the way through. It was normal, almost, because I didn't know any different.
I think once you watch it like on TV and things like that, you really get to connect. You get to connect to the character that you relate to, maybe that's closer in your age or your views on the world, and kind of, get their perspective. And I think that's really important, A lot of us, African Americans, there's not a lot of stories, told about us, specifically ones that involve healthcare and things like this. And I think, we all know stories are the best way to get some things across. And you can't just point a finger and say, hey, you need to go to the doctor, you need to see a doctor. Sometimes you need to tell it through a story that we can connect to. And Linked by Love is exactly that.
To be able to put this information out there in such a way that I'll call it infotainment, if I may. It's information and an entertainment. And put them together, and people won't know they're learning because they're being entertained. And then there are points in time where it's directly in your face. You are going to learn this from the doctors. You're going to take this home. These are actionable things you can actually do tomorrow. I am so grateful to be a part of this film that is going to save lives.
The best possible outcome for Linked by Love series being in the public is for everybody to see it. Really, that's the best possible. For people who may be at high risk for kidney disease, people who have kidney disease, people who are thinking about having a transplant, people who are thinking about being a living donor, or even putting that pink dot on their driver's license.
I think Linked by Love can definitely contribute to reducing or decreasing the disparities in living donation within the African American community. mainly because it provides a real life example. Seeing someone go through a similar situation that patients may be currently engaging in themselves, from the diagnosis and the fear and the misconceptions and managing all of that to, having a discussion with family members about what's going on to, someone coming forth and donating.
So in my world, sitting in a transplant center, I would love for someone to come in and to say, oh, I watched Link by Love, and I'm wondering, could I do that? Could my brother do that? Could we sign up for your program? And if they got a transplant and we knew that they had seen this series, there's nothing that could make me happier.
This story gets to show us how lucky we are and how, I don't want to say easy, but how accessible getting a transplant is. In our community, as an African-American woman, we don't think of that. We don't think of that. So many communities don't believe that they deserve a transplant or that anybody would care enough to give them one. And this story shows otherwise.
So at the time that you have the common symptoms that people recognize, leg swelling, fatigue, loss of appetite, nausea, itching, which we call pruritus, those are signs that the kidneys are no longer filtering blood. They're damaged to the point where you're approaching the need for replacement, dialysis or transplant.
The people who are at most risk for kidney disease are the patients with diabetes and hypertension. But there are other things. Obesity is becoming high on the list. People who have certain cancers actually get kidney disease as well. Heart disease actually can lead to a syndrome that can lead to chronic kidney disease. But diabetes and hypertension are number 1 and 2 in this country. And so that's what we tend to focus on.
Diabetes and high blood pressure run rampant in my family. And that's something that I learned while working on this. I did not know that the pipeline from diabetes and high blood pressure was so close to kidney disease and needing a transplant. I had no idea.
My grandmother actually had diabetes. She passed because she had kidney failure. I do remember seeing my mom go through it and riding in the car and then going to sit with my grandmother at dialysis for a few hours. So she had somebody there. I had to ask about what was happening because I didn't understand.
When I was growing up, the older people in my family always said, oh, well, he's got sugar. Too bad. And that meant that somebody had diabetes, but they didn't use the word diabetes back then. Or he's got high blood pressure. Oh, and it was always this stigma to that. And as I got older, it changed. And I started hearing the proper terms because my mother's side of the family, all of her siblings except one, ended up being diagnosed with diabetes. My aunt, I guess she was diagnosed late 30s, and she is on insulin to this day. My other aunt was diagnosed early 60s. She takes medication. My mom was diagnosed in the 60s. She decided to go the diet and exercise route. And then I had an uncle who, for whatever reasons, chose to do nothing. And I watched him lose body parts and eventually his life. And then in 2021, I was diagnosed as being pre-diabetic. And 3 months later, we shot Link by Love.
Diabetes, I like to call a vascular disease, okay? Everybody knows it's about blood sugar, but if you've ever cooked sugar in a pan, it turns black, right? That is similar to what happens on the blood vessel wall when you have blood sugar there, because you gotta remember your temperature is a little bit higher than the ambient temperature out here. So it's akin to putting sugar on that blood vessel wall, which leads to all kinds of biochemical changes that leads you at high risk of a heart attack, high risk of a stroke. But the kidneys are a ball of blood vessels, specialized blood vessels. So those blood vessels directly get affected by diabetes.
Diabetes is also similar. You can have those elevated blood sugars and not know it. The way we detect that is by, checking your blood test and seeing how you're, whether you're pre-diabetic or not. And so early signs of diabetes tend to be vision blurriness, People can get nauseous. They can start to have, episodes where they're, having weakness and fatigue. The earliest signs that people tend to think about a lot is feeling very thirsty. At that point, the damage to the blood vessels from years of elevated blood sugars is also happening in the kidneys. And so very similarly, when people are showing up with late-stage diagnosis of diabetes, they've already got damage to the kidneys.
Hypertension, on the other hand, I like to think of it as almost like a jackhammer, okay? So with a jackhammer, you break open cement, obviously, by constantly beating on it. So if your pressure is extremely high, that pressure is transduced to those small blood vessels. And so it just beats and beats and beats and beats on those blood vessels. So after it does that for a period of time, those smaller blood vessels kind of give way and like, you know what, forget it, I'm not working anymore.
You can have high blood pressure and not know it. And so it's another one of these situations where people who will have elevated blood pressure may not be symptomatic. At the time that they're having symptoms, heart attack, stroke, also leg swelling, headaches, that's the sign that their organs are being damaged. Most of those individuals have had high blood pressure for years, sometimes even decades. So if you can get that blood pressure down, sometimes it can be very simple things: weight loss, diet, exercise, reducing stress. Those things, non-medication ways to bring blood pressure down if we find people in the early phases of high blood pressure. Medications can also do it. What we know is regardless how you get there, whether it's medications, lifestyle intervention, once we get those blood pressures down to normal ranges, we prevent what's called in-organ damage. And so that damage that happens because your heart is pumping against the high blood pressure and your heart gets thick and you get heart failure, your legs swell, you get short of breath, you may have a higher risk of heart attack. Similar things are happening to the kidneys.
I learned everything that I know now about kidney disease from Linked by Love. I didn't know anything before. I was never educated on this subject, but I went away with knowing that it's preventable and that you can take actions to decrease your chances, like improving your diet and exercising. And these are things that I had done before, but for no real reason, I guess. And Linked by Love just sort of solidified that knowledge for me.
This is why, having messaging like this is so important, both to let people know that you may be asymptomatic, and so getting to the doctor, getting screened regularly, you can get detected at a point where you may never have symptomatic kidney disease.
Many people in the African American community may not seek out primary care consistently, so the annual physicals, that kind of thing, people are avoiding primary care, which would help to identify the early signs of kidney failure. With chronic kidney disease, the earlier stages have little to no outward symptoms. You feel relatively okay until you don't.
Most chronic kidney diseases are diseases that progress over a long number of years. During those years, if people were to have education regarding their kidney health, they would be able to prevent the progression of kidney disease. Things like obesity, diabetes, hypertension, nutritional changes are very effective in slowing down the progression of kidney disease.
We know from some of the best studies, randomized trials, where we've taken people in that prediabetes phase, given them a medication to get their blood sugar down, asked them to stay at about a 2,000 calorie diet and exercise about 150 minutes a week versus nothing. The most effective of those three is the diet and exercise, reducing your likelihood of actually becoming a diabetic by almost 60%. So our ability to prevent diabetes through certain lifestyle measures, is probably the strongest way to prevent it.
Prediabetes actually gives us a window onto that vascular system, that vascular disease that I was telling you about. So if your sugars are high or borderline high before you actually reach diabetes, we know that we better intervene at that point. Otherwise, the untoward effects of diabetes will happen. And again, it's those small blood vessels. Everybody worries about heart attack, stroke, and now kidney disease, but there are other things that happen with those small blood vessels getting damaged. We can prevent that by reversing pre-diabetes into nothing. And that's the best opportunity to intervene.
I learned how important it is to seek medical care at the first sign that something is wrong. And if you are given the instruction to exercise more, eat differently, this is how you protect your kidneys, you need to heed those instructions because it could get a lot worse.
If you go into African American communities, in general, the foodstuffs that are there, there's a fast food place on every corner, it seems, you know, and getting the word out, and there being a dearth of education in the African American community about kidney disease specifically is another problem.
Working on the series has encouraged me to be very diligent about my medical follow-ups and checking on things when they don't feel right, just not taking any chances.
I'm going more towards a plant-based diet. I exercise a lot more. I'm enjoying myself. I feel healthier. I go in for regular checkups. And, you know, I'm just grateful that I have all of this modern technology available to me and that I know about it.
It just really made me open my eyes to know that there are options. A lot of times we think, oh, okay, this is just with old age, or this is just with, you know, my hair is getting gray, or my knees are cracking when I get up in the morning. But now I go to the doctor. I mean, seriously, after the series, I actually went to I hadn't been, COVID hit, things had been happening. I didn't go. I'm like, I'll be all right. I'll get it checked out later. I made sure to go. I made appointments. I had 3 different appointments that next month for different things.
I love candy, and it's just always a problem for me. But and having both my parents be pre-diabetic, knowing that, I cut it down to like a bare minimum.
I like sweets, as you can probably tell by the bake shop. and Dr. Anthony actually said that sweets are the hardest for people to give up. And I totally fall right into that. So I'm much more mindful about the sweets that I'm taking in. And I got a treadmill, so I get on that treadmill and get moving.
Before doing the series, probably a few months before, I had found out that I have high cholesterol, which I had no idea why I did. It wasn't genetic, but I never really actually paid attention to what I was eating and what I was just obsessing over what I thought was healthy. And doing the series, it was like that was part of the focus, and so I could look at that a little bit more and expand what I had been eating before and being more open to changing my diet, which I needed.
Linked by Love gives us a picture of an African American family that we can aspire to. In the African American community, we need that aspiration, particularly in the realm of healthcare and others taking care of us and being okay with that. That is crazy important in the African American community. And it centers on something I'm passionate about, which makes it that much better.